How do you know if you should start a podcast?
If you asked me in 2018, I would say everyone needs a podcast. Everyone needs a platform. Everyone needs to be on a show. Everyone needs to talk. They don't. Everyone needs, though, to have something that they're doing in their life that they're proud of, that they want to share with others. And they need to sit in the chair to be the expert. They need to be highlighted. They need to be uplifted. They need to be seen so that they can be heard for more people.
Guys, hope you welcome the one and only Shawn Anthony. Dude, what's going on?
Man, listen, man, I'm excited to be here with you because, I've definitely have been someone who has heard of your name, has seen your book on shelves. And so it's an honor to be here, man.
Dude, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're writing a new one now called The Entrepreneurship Edge. Hopefully to have it out mid next year, which we're pretty stoked. Got to work on the entrepreneur from the heart, the head, and the hands. There's all these books about strategies and tactics, not a whole lot about how to help with isolation and pride and arrogance and impatience and all that stuff. So we're excited about that. But I'm excited to have you, dude. Man, you have built quite the media company, man. So how'd you get started, like really leaning into, helping, thought leaders like actually get on, shows that are good? Because, the podcast world, there's like 1,000 bazillion shows. Most of them don't last past the like fourth episode. So how do you how'd you get started in it? And then kind of let's walk through the framework a little bit.
Yeah, man. Well, I got started in it because I'm a podcaster myself. In 2018, I started a show while being a corporate brand manager of a company that everyone shops at, Target. And before that, I was brand manager of Macy's. And I started a show called School's Over Now What, man. And I just started interviewing everybody and fell in love with it. I started interviewing Ed Milet, Seth Godin, Grant Cardone, Amy Porterfield, you name it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the people you probably know or hang around.
A lot of the things you just mentioned are good friends. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome, man. I was at Ed House in Laguna, man, and that completely changed my life. But what I found out when I was podcasting is that I turned podcasting to a 6-figure side hustle. And everyone started asking me, hey, can you teach me? Can you teach me? And then I started brand managing the talent. Yeah. So I started to see these gaps and realizing that the huge ROI was doing what we're doing right now, but being on the opposite side of the chair and being a guest on a really good show and telling your story.
Yeah. Well, the crazy part is I'm sure you know this. This is no secret to you. I get, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 podcast preps, like things come across my desk every day or essentially my email box. And of course, we got producers for the show and stuff like that. So they do a lot of the screening and whatnot to make sure we have great guests like the ones you guys have sent across, which have been fantastic, by the way. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
But in doing that, it's like, all right. So if you're serious about actually podcasting, so from my perspective, podcasting is nothing more than a vehicle to share great knowledge with people who need the knowledge, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, how do you, select the people that you guys want to work with to then put on shows? And number two, how do you get past the gatekeepers? Because the gatekeeper thing is real.
Yeah, man, the gatekeeper thing is real. I think what's important is you have to establish real relationships with podcast hosts, right? You have to, it's a two-way street. You don't want to just sit in anybody. You want to do enough research to understand what are the core principles of the show, what are the values of the show, how does it, align to the actual person you're potentially pitching to. And I think credibility helps. And I think what helps us a lot is a founder story. So like we'll take a talent and yes, they might be someone who's done amazing things. They might have written a book. They might be someone that has a conference, but us making the ask, I found out that a lot of people who make, the ability to read the email, do their own research, right? They start clicking buttons, they start seeing Pod Pro Max, and they fall in love with the founder story. And the founder story is so unique. There's so many people who have achieved not a lot of great things. They have companies, but they haven't done the work that they're actually telling you to go do. So I think, having that upper edge and knowing it's a two-way street has definitely been beneficial.
Yeah, man. Well, let me ask you about this just in talent in general. So there's in this world, right? So when you get above, call it 8 figures, 9 figures in top line revenue as a business owner, you start getting a lot of attention from, just outside places, right? And, that's a blessing, right? You bust your hump. I busted my butt for over 25 years to build several companies, one of which was super successful that I exited last year, which is great and all. But at the same time, it's like, it took me 3 years, 4 years, 5 years before people even had any clue who my name was, why I had the street cred, why I was worthy of being on, different shows and different things like that. How do you how do you take someone that's maybe has done the major work, right? They've done the thing, right? They have the street cred, they got the knowledge, they got the wisdom, they got the t-shirt with everything on it. Like they've done everything, but the marketplace doesn't know who they are. But yet you see a tremendous amount of potential based on what they've done. How do you begin to work with them to position them in such a strong way to make them a viable option in the thought leadership world?
Man, I love that question. No one's ever asked me that. One of the things we think about is, we have everyone do this podcast intake form, right? What I found out is a lot of people think they're good at pitching or think they're good at pitching themselves, but they really don't have the idea of understanding what that core message, right?
Yeah.
And so like what we do is like we'll take all the articles or we'll take all the things they've done in life, all the lifetime achievements, whatever their resume may be. And then what we do is we find a way to interestingly tell that story in a uniquely different way. And what happens when someone has built the credibility, and I use Sanira, for example, Sanira, is a client of ours who sold a company for $1 billion. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be like, well, what is this about? Right?
God bless you.
But she's also working on her second unicorn. And she's one of 20 women to have done that. That is extremely rare. Yeah. So it's telling that story. See how he did that? Telling that story in a unique way that positions her, whether it's to be on a financial show, a business show, or even a thought leadership show like Jay Shetty, what she just did. I think you really have to understand on how to take what you've done and spin it. And the worst thing I found out is that talent is the absolute worst at representing themselves. Like to get on a blowhorn and scream, Shawn Anthony, that ain't gonna cut it. What really does is someone else telling your story and being that barrier to bridge the gap. And I think that's what makes what we do so unique, is that we're able to understand what they've done, what they've accomplished. Even if they've been on shows, we know what shows not to even pitch them to, but be able to maybe pull those highlights. For example, if you wanted to do a relationship show right now, and I'm like, oh, okay, I haven't heard you talk about relationships, but you might have said something on a podcast that we can take as a clip and a social media proof to position you and mention that to that host of that show that you want to be on. So those are some strategies that we apply.
No, I love that. And I was also thinking too, early days. So I personally haven't done a lot about outreach to get me on other shows. I haven't even asked Ed to be on a show or anything like that, right? I just haven't done it, right? I've been so busy building businesses. I've been so busy, obviously doing my own show, trying to create own valuable content, trying to put great content out on social, trying to really let the market know who we are and how we can serve them, right? So when I look at that, I also go back 4 years, when I was getting on a handful of shows here or there. And early days, I don't know that I was all that great at communicating what I was actually gifted at communicating, right? It's almost like the lens that you're using. So I'll say this, we have this new term that we're coining internally that'll be in the new book called the integrated entrepreneur, right? There's lots of terms in integration as far as like in relationship sectors, like, be grounded and emotionally intelligent and all these types of things. And what I got to think is like, dude, every single entrepreneur needs to be that way in their business, right? And however, I look back 4 years ago at some earlier shows that I've done, and I realized that I was saying similar things, but it wasn't in a focused, clarified way that the audience could really grab a hold and say, I understand that concept. I love that concept. I want to apply that concept. I want to grow from that concept, like to then make myself more valuable. And I'm just being honest with you and the audience in making sure that I show up the best as a thought leader when getting on these shows. So I'm a big believer there's a bit of a ramp up, right? You almost have to start with some lower shows to get some reps under your belt, right? To really kind of like really hone your message and stuff like that before you really start really striving to be on the larger shows. And I'm curious to know, do you think that's a great strategy? Just because that seems to be my journey.
Yeah, I think the first thing you want to do is you obviously want to get your reps in. I do think that there's an opportunity once you start getting your reps in to really swing for something big. Especially if you have the background and credibility of done something. There's this thing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs should think about, especially, entrepreneurs that are in thought leadership or positioning themselves or talking on podcasts. And I'm not sure, you probably have heard of it. Have you heard of the 7-11-4 method?
I haven't. No.
So what happens is that it's 7 hours of content. Like you need 7 hours of content for a consumer to really understand your brand and really start to like it. You need 11 different In terms of this, you need 11 different touch points and how you're able to interact with this specific person. And then you need 4 locations, right? You need to be seen in 4 locations. Those 4 locations could be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It could be you speaking on stage,
Sure.
right? Those 11 touch points could be, someone sharing your content, someone commenting on your content. Those 7 hours of content, though, could be 7 hours of you on podcasts, or 7 hours of you speaking on podcasts, or 7 hours of someone interviewing you or your own show. It allows for people to understand you and get you. And I think people that are on podcasts, so many people are on shows and they're wondering, what's my ROI? What's my ROI? Your first ROI is really building, the trust and credibility and getting to know a completely different audience. Right. And so, like right now, as we're talking, 7-11-04, someone right now is probably watching this or listening to this, clicking on the show notes, now binging 7 hours of my content. Right. And then they go through 11 touch points, the 4 different locations before they're saying, hey, listen, Shawn, I want to be a part of this. I want to know about how can I do a podcast tour, right? Which is something that we specialize in. And I think that your approach of swinging at the smaller shows before the big shows, that's a smooth strategy. But don't sleep on those small shows. They have very niche audiences who are actionable and ready to buy. Sometimes these broad mainstream shows, they take a little bit longer. You got to run ads on that, right? So
it's more of a strategy. A little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was also thinking too that from the early days in general, I think podcasters come at shows from my perspective in 3 different ways. One way is they come at the show as in, what am I going to get from the audience? Which is, I don't think is all that healthy. One might be, how am I going to serve the audience and give them the best, content I can possibly give them? How am I going to ask questions, that really have never been heard before, they're really truly curious and inquisitive and stuff like that, which I tend to lean that direction. And the third way is how to actually show up for the guest. So one of the things that I strive to do for my guests is I try to make sure I show up for the guest, because they're taking the time out of their day and their energy to come on the show to share their valuable insight and wisdom that they've earned their street cred in. Right. And it seems like to me that that's the best way to really kind of go at the marketplace. It's like you go at it from a place of serving the guest as well as serving the audience. So how do I ask questions that the audience is going to get the biggest benefit from, while also showcasing the guest thought leadership, knowledge, personal development space, all of that? Do you find that method works really well? Do you guys have different spins on that? I'm just curious to hear your feedback.
Yeah, I mean, that method works really well. Whenever you're starting a conversation and the conversation is strictly in serve mode and it's strictly led by curiosity, it's only allowing your audience to sit in the room with us and ask questions that they probably would never be able to ask. Right. Because one, they would have to get the credibility that you've gotten to even interview the people you've interviewed. Right. So, and it becomes a banking house of just knowledge. And I think what's so important is the action takers who listen to the knowledge, who then go out and apply the information. So I think you're spot on in that strategy there, because everything else doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't flow right. It just doesn't feel genuine. So I would 100% agree.
Well, I was also thinking too that, when you take the time as a thought leader to go on a show, right? If you go out with step 1, which is serve the audience, how can I deliver the very best content to the audience? Okay, great. Awesome. Well, the next step is how do I get the audience to stay engaged with me? So you mentioned binge watching content, which is obviously one primary method. They're going to go and do that if they enjoy the conversation, all that good stuff. The second one is how do you get them to, what do you recommend to your folks about then getting them to some kind of resource that's free, that's valuable content to the audience, and then help them build their list, help them build their business, etc. Because I find that it's one thing to go out and create the content, put the content on social, get all the likes and the engagement, the comments and all that stuff. But then what? Like, you say one dumb thing and you've lost the real estate, and I kind of look at the attention grab, right? It's so hard to get attention. Right? You go from attention, then it's so hard to get engagement, like true engagement, where they're actually wanting to get more of your information and are willing to, download a free resource or something like that. So how do you take, I guess what's the strategy that you guys try to deploy in helping your thought leaders, not just get on shows, but also build businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you want to have the structure in place. Anyone that does like a podcast tour with us and we're placing them on shows, because we also manage talent, like actually just manage them. So
Yeah.
in terms of the podcast tour perspective, we always ask very, very good questions. And some of those questions detailing what is your purpose in wanting to do this, right? So, if is your purpose wanting to, grow your following, is your purpose wanting to, gain new audiences, gain new leads, or perhaps your focus might be you really want to get sales because you got a conference coming up and you want people to come out.
Yeah.
I think it's important to always offer something that people can grab that's tangible to build your list. And for me, when I started podcasting, go back to the founder story of this whole thing and how to really make it go crazy. I found out that the podcast starter kit, so many people wanting
Yeah.
to know how to do what we're doing now, how to set up, what apps, what to use, was a huge hit. It allowed
Yeah.
for me to start gaining a huge community. And then also, too, what are you doing to build community outside of you being on the shows, that now the shows become just another asset of the 7-Eleven for? And whether that is, online communities, one of the online communities that really gave me a huge boost back in the Clubhouse days in 2020.
Wow.
I had my own club called Podcast Secrets Revealed that grew over to 42,000 members. And I was on the Clubhouse stage with Lewis Howes, Pat Flynn, Amy Porterfield. So the credibility was only rising, right? So I think, whether, you have to figure out what that community is for you, whether it's school or whatever have you got to have some things in motion while you're on these shows so that you're actively giving the audience other ways to get involved and hear more from you.
Dude, I love that. Love that. I'm going to go ahead and hit a subject that I know you're passionate about, and that is whether or not people should do a podcast to begin with. Okay. I've obviously heard your insights. You can obviously share your heart again. But I am curious on the question after that is, how do you know if you should start a podcast? Like be a podcaster versus just be a guest on a podcast show?
Yeah, I think 100%. If you asked me in 2018, I would say everyone needs a podcast. Everyone needs a platform. Everyone needs to be on a show. Everyone needs to talk. They don't. Everyone needs, though, to have something that they're doing in their life that they're proud of, that they want to share with others, and they need to sit in the chair to be the expert.
Yeah.
They need to be highlighted. They need to be uplifted. They need to be seen so that they can be heard for more people.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in that. I think, it comes down to knowing, okay, should I start a podcast? Or what should I start a podcast? You should ask yourself a couple of clarifying questions. Are you willing to do the reps? You brought up something earlier. Very few people get past 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Are you willing to put in the time?
Yeah.
The cheat code to get around
now. Yeah.
Oh, that's congrats, man. The cheat code to get around the time for a lot of people, if you know, especially entertainment type of clientele, or just entrepreneurs in general, is doing seasons. They know they can't go week for week, but they know they can buckle down. They can carve out 2 or 3 days a month to have at least 9 episodes banked in and call it a season.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to figure out what can you truly do. But if you play the season game, as good as me, the audience is going to find somebody else.
Yeah.
They always do. They have to, you have to beat out 1 out of 6 of people's favorite podcasts. People typically have 6. You got to be one of their favorite 6.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the favorite 6. How do you go favorite 6? How do you get there? I mean, you guys are what, top 0.15 or top 0.5%? Like, you don't get much higher than that.
You're paying attention to listen notes. I like that. I like that. Well, that's longevity there. That's a lot of longevity and consistency there. That audience knows every single Friday is happening. I've trained them to literally listen to me more than watch me. So there's 3 types of podcasters that I don't think people pay attention to. Here's the 3 types. There's the podcaster who's extremely good on audio. You can hear their voice, and it's like putting God between the ears. Yeah, like you hear him, like, man, is that Morgan Freeman? Like, but you automatically just resonate with them. You don't want to even see them. You just want to listen to them so you can gain their wisdom. Then there's another podcaster who's really good at YouTube and entertaining. Man, they're a television show, really. And in the end of the day, people like looking at them. They might be attractive to some people and to some element in what they're doing in their life, right? Or it might be a show that requires a high visual element. And then what I found out, even with the YouTube, type of podcaster is that they sometimes don't have the strongest audio listenership. They didn't start off in audio. The audio wasn't their core. That wasn't their core audience. They came from a social media following. And then there's a unicorn. There's an audience, there's a person who's good at both. I mean that they have a really good YouTube and they have a really good audio. They have figured out mass appeal, and wherever you fall in that category, I think you have to lean on to what your strength is and keep providing it strongest there. But also, you're doing the work anyway. Still make sure you're showing up on other platforms because there might be another, a small audience that continues to grow with you. And for me, being in that 0.5% that you mentioned with listen notes, that's an audience that we have been really focused on audio from the very beginning. And sometimes, Stephen, sometimes I look back and I think of some of the episodes I've done. I'm like, man, that would have been crazy to travel to them, but wasn't nobody doing it. It was so uncommon. The first person I ever traveled to was two people. The first person I traveled to was in New York. It was Mims. He had a song called "This Is Why I'm Hot" 2007, and I interviewed him, became a great friend. And then the second person that I traveled to interview was Ed Milet in Laguna Beach. You have to figure out those pockets of when you're willing to do it, because it's a huge investment. But for me at that particular time, I was still working a corporate job. I was literally going to see these guys on vacations, so, I think you have to figure out what it is for you, lean upon that and keep going.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show. Steven Scoggins here. I've got something that I think is actually going to blow your mind. Imagine taking your life and your business to the whole another level. I'm talking about an 8-figure level and beyond. You see, you've been working your butt off to build your business to where it is now. But what if you could work smarter, free up more time, make more money and impact along the way? How much would that be worth to you? You see, I can prove that basic steps, basic mindset shifts, and subtle changes can make the biggest difference. I want to introduce you to the 8-figure mindset makeover. It's absolutely free and it's here for you. It's a powerful summary of my top strategies that help propel me from the streets, if you will, to upwards of 9 figures and quote unquote success as we like to chase it. This is more than just tips though. It's a complete mindset overhaul with simple hacks that you can apply today to begin working on your unprecedented heights in your own business. I would like the honor to share these types of things with you that turn my dreams into reality so you can experience the same type of joy and freedom that I now get to live out in my own day. In other words, it's time for you to build your own unstoppable enterprise. And if you're really ready to take it to the next level and elevate your life and your business, this is an absolute game changer for you. So if you want to take advantage of this free resource, simply go to the show notes and click the link, or you can go to stevenscoggins.com/8-figure. That's stevenscoggins.com/8-figure. Until then, much love. God bless. Let's get back to the show. Take care.
Well, I know that for us, when we set out to do this show, it's gone through a couple different title iterations in the last 3 or 4 years. I think it's been 3 years now, a little less than 3 years. And in doing that, we started early on knowing we were going to do audio and visual because we realized that people consume content in different ways. And then we have the producer, if you will, of the show. They'll go and they'll make slight adjustments to the edits for the different audiences in the grand scheme of things. One of the things that's been the hardest thing for me in this world is it's interesting because on the video side, I love doing in person, right? I just do. I mean, there's a different vibe.
100%.
I mean, this is awesome, but talking about awesomer is like when you get to do it live, right? You can go from, we take a normal 45-minute virtual podcast that goes for 2 or 3 hours, which gives you all kinds of content, and then you kind of pull that together. I guess the difficulty, post exit is I know I need to get back to, right, doing some of the more live podcasts because one, I enjoy it better. I think the guests enjoy it better. Plus, we try to make it fun. Yeah. When we did live podcast when I was still in Raleigh, North Carolina, basically last November, I moved to Utah. Post.
Oh man, I'm in North Carolina. That'd have been dope.
Oh well, I still own a live event facility there in Garner, so maybe we'll hook up and do something there. That'd be fun. We actually did Ed Milet's book launch at my place. We actually did his whole Max Out Live thing. So,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's how he and I became friends. But one of the things that I've realized is, there's this element of wanting to get back to live, but we used to do an experience. So I would pay to fly the guest in. Mm-hmm. I would take them out to dinner the night before, get to know them, and make sure it was a nice place. But it wasn't Wendy's. Or McDonald's. It was, typically a nice restaurant. We go have dinner, get to know each other a little bit, come in, do a phenomenal show because there's different insights you get when you're actually building relationship first.
Way different.
Right? Questions are different, takeaways are different, and then at the end of the show, we would typically invite them for an exit, what we would call an exit dinner, which is like, hey, just what do you think about the show? How can we make it better? And at the time I saw, I was operating at live event facility personally on a regular basis. We also let them film, content with floor to ceiling LED walls and, kind of backstage stuff for their own sizzle reels. I say all that to say that one of the things that I would like to get back to when I'm hosting guests live is back to the experience model. At the same time, when I choose to invest my own financial resources into and bringing that guest out, one, I want them to have a great experience, but also I got to make sure that guest has the goods, right? And one of the things that I'm trying to figure out how to do is how to really validate that guest has the goods, which I'm curious to know, how do you guys validate? Right. Because I'm assuming you guys don't rep everybody that comes to you. I'm assuming you guys rep.
We can't.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So how do you determine as an organization, like who's got the goods?
Man, I love this question. There's two ways I look at the goods, right? So there's talent that we represent, like full blown on management. So let me start there. So we represent, I'll tell you some of the talent. We represent the Polites, who are on A&E and Hulu. They have a show called 50/50 Flip. They sell real estate, $50,000 in. Sell the house in 50 days. Signed for 4 seasons. Second season airs November 9th. If you want to check it out, please do. Fire show. We also represent Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's dad, and Solange's dad. And we put him on many different speaking opportunities as well as podcasts and things like that, and many other people as well. And so in that type of talent, in that type of representation, when you're representing someone, you have a percentage of what's really happening. You truly evaluate before you even take them on. One, you look and see, okay, do they have, is the juice worth the squeeze and getting into this, right? Because we're out every single day talking about them, pitching them, and trying to make something happen. In the podcast tour perspective and vetting guests, right? So the podcast tour perspective, we're known for the Signature 30 Show podcast tour. The way we vet guests, we have a very high referral system. We have a very high referral, very few chances. Like you might see a post of me putting on Instagram telling you, oh, we just did something crazy. Or you might see us doing something crazy.
Yeah.
But we vetted everybody that we're doing something crazy with. And the referral process to me has been very rewarding because now you're working with a talent. Let's say we're working with you. You're 10 shows in, you're signed for 30 shows. Right about 10 shows, you're having such a good experience. You're telling us about everybody you can think of. We are then evaluating their Instagrams. We're evaluating shows they've been on. Yeah. We're evaluating things they may have said. Yeah. Then we're able to have a conversation on what it would look like for us to represent them, because very similar to companies like CAA and WME, they can't just take everybody. They don't even want to talk to you. Right? So I think
I'll take it. Come on over.
yeah. So, it's really are they who they say they are. And and that's truly just crossing T's, dotting I's. But what I found out, to your point, this is one of the main things I found out that we put into our system is the value of media training, the value of understanding what to say when you are asked a question, the value of knowing how to take a podcast interview where it becomes not a boring interview, but a good one where you are asked to be back. And, so we've put, in what we do, media training for those that need it. We have many different things that are coming very soon in partnership with some of the people we've worked with so that people have those assets, because we might get you out there, but if you don't know how to talk, what's the point? Right. So we got to evaluate, man. We got to look at what they got going on so that we're as proud to announce them as they are to be working with us.
Yeah, man, dude, I love that. I was also thinking too, I've had this happen in business before. I haven't had it happen in the media side yet. Thank God. But in the business world, all right, let's say I go and hire a top C-suite professional or an executive, okay, to run a segment of the business. And they're great people, they're doing great work, but then they do something dumb, right? They have a momentary lapse of integrity or something, character flaw or character issue at the moment. And that character flaw gets known by the marketplace. Then the marketplace is like, dude, this person's still doing F, Y, and Z for your company. What do you think? Like, is there ever a time when you may have to fire a client when they're not operating in their, in their genre correctly?
Man, I love that question. One of the things, very similar to you, in business, I'm saying one of the things I've learned. I learned this, man. It's like heartbreak when those things happen.
Yeah.
It's literally like,
Because you spend all this
man,
time and energy with each other, right?
man, it's like heartbreak, man. Listen, I mean, I could probably use therapy for some of that type of heartbreak. But what I did when I had that heartbreak is we put systems in place so the heartbreak doesn't happen again without some crazy consequences, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. When I started brand managing talent, I started brand managing some really well-known people. I brand managed Terry Gioma the first year we were together. She did $30 million. I brand managed Richard Rogers, who wrote a book called We Should All Be Millionaires. And this is when I really start understanding the value of what I was doing and the value of podcast placement. At that particular time, I had people who were working with me, even from a videography standpoint, who would go behind and make themselves sound like they're so amazing, who then get jobs like creative director of companies that I brought them into. And it become the most weirdest vibe of all time. And they don't end up working there very long because the person who hired them realized that they weren't the secret sauce.
Yeah.
And I think what I learned from that situation and what I'm moving towards here is that you have to protect yourself with NDAs, non-competes, all of those things before you can even jump into those conversations. And then one of the things that we do a lot of times with the talent that we have is that we put a contract before you do a podcast tour because we already know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
We already know. I've seen it so many times where someone starts a podcast interview, but they'll be on stage next week. So
Yeah.
there's so many upsides. I think you just have to protect yourself like you would in business and any other category to be able to assess, okay, how can we help you? And so that none of those things happen, right? Because when they do happen, dude, they're heartbreaks.
Dude, and that you just reminded me of something too. I remember when we had a similar situation with NDAs, non-competes, and stuff like that, but we at one time we had them one-sided. So let's say we hired a contractor and they're going to work for us and then serve our clients, right?
Yeah.
And so they're protected against working for that client directly without getting verbal or getting written approval from us. Okay. Because from time to time, it makes sense. It's like, hey, you know what? I think you should work with them. We don't want to work with them. Knock yourself out. Enjoy yourself. You're about to understand some new stuff. I also realized, and this is late stage of the business I exited, that we began doing it two ways. So it was contract and also client. So client couldn't go and solicit, and contractor couldn't go and solicit, or employee couldn't go and solicit. Right? We had to maintain that integrity bubble around the organization itself as a whole.
Man, I love that. I mean, you should, and this is what you're saying is what you've learned, you had to do. I learned it the exact same way. And I'm like, dude, this is never happening again.
Yeah.
And even I'll take another route. I'm thinking about now that we're talking about this. One of the biggest blessings I ever had, and I would love to show you behind the scenes offline so you can just see and be wowed by it, is that, the blessing I've had is that I spent many years running corporate and being one of the most highest performers of all time. I was promoted 6 times in 4 years. When I left Target, any given moment, hundreds of people could pick up the phone and call me and ask me about anything and needed my authority.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege, man, of hiring so many amazing teams and having so many great engagement scores. And the coolest thing about entrepreneurship isn't that now I do it for myself. And man, I have a phenomenal team. And the team that I have, before I even hired them, I already knew. And you probably noticed by the email correspondence how fast they are.
Yeah.
I already knew, Steve. I already kind of knew that they're going to be put in a position where they could try me. It's almost like, I'm not how religious you are, but you know how that was like
Jesus
12,
guy. Wait,
okay, you just okay. You know how that was a disciple and he knew one of them would betray him.
Yeah.
Like, this is how I feel about business. I'm going to put you in those positions where it's only human nature. So how do I protect myself where you don't go AWOL, go wanting to go do something crazy?
Yeah.
And also too, that even the people that I'm putting you around, because there are a lot of 7-figure, 8-figure entrepreneurs that you aren't going to run off and get hired by them, right? And so I tell people all the time when I jump on a meeting, especially new ones, whether it's with a VC or whoever may have you, hey, listen, we can have as much free conversation as possible because everybody on this call has signed everything that you can imagine. You know,
Yeah. putting
Because
that in the ethos. I love
I
that.
put it in the ecosystem
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
love
find
it.
out very quickly they're gonna love my people. So,
Yeah.
so don't get too excited because it can't even happen. So, but again, I have the talent themselves also recognize that, and
Yeah.
they're privileged. They love the environment, the flexibility, and I think what solves and stops that from happening is as a leader, you give them the environment that they want and the freedom, but pull back when you need to.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and sometimes you got to be a little stern with it, and it's not always going to be roses. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the best interest of you and the best
Yeah.
interest of the company.
Dude, I love it. I was also thinking too, just on that same subject matter, like a lot of the ones that I had to get involved with or step into situations like that, right?
Mhm.
Where a lot of people I had already in my mind had already prepared a path for them for a very lucrative future. And they go and do the Judas thing for 30
Yep.
pieces of silver, and I was going to give them 90 pieces of silver. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
and that's what boggles my mind. Like a lot of times when I'm sitting down with a new team member, and we in all the businesses I've done, we've always done some kind of profit share bonus system, whatever. So the more successful the company is, the more you get cut, whatever. And then we also would tend to create a hierarchy of different levels of progressing through the organization as a whole. But it boggles my mind how greed, and I know we're getting off a podcast, but this is just
It's a very good couple. It's a good
right?
couple.
how tempting greed is,
Yes.
how disruptive it is to not just the business, not just the client, but the person who is about to get a blessing, who stepped on their own blessing.
Yes. I mean, it's like trauma, man. It's like trauma. Listen, the person who did that to me, man, they would probably be the second in command if they just stayed down. And and the sad thing about it though, you may have experiences I have. They always come back.
Yeah.
And they always come back, and it's like, hey, it's a wrap, man. It's
man,
over.
I didn't mean it. It's like it's like a relationship a lot of times. This is
100% it is.
I can't tell me, like, I've in every single circumstance when I've had a very difficult ending to relationships. I'm using personal ones, and I'm talking like since I was a teenager, right? I mean, a long time. Like that, I'm having to, like, it's causing me to do some deep work, But the funny thing is like in every single circumstance, by the time I finally get to the point where I'm done, I'm actually done.
Yeah.
Like I've spent time pursuing, I've spent time talking and chasing and doing all that kind of stuff. And I've spent time like trying to, repair and all this kind of stuff. And I get to the point I'm done. 6 months after I get to the point I'm done, I've moved on. All of a sudden there's this epiphany about how amazing it was before.
Yeah.
And I've had it happen in business. I've had it happen in personal relationships. I've had it happen in family relationships. So I'm curious, since I know I can look at your face and see you've had some of that stuff too. I'm curious, what boundaries have you put in place in an effort to like draw that downward? I don't think you can eliminate it, but I'm curious what kind of boundaries you put in place.
Man, you just move way more cautiously. Your boundaries are, when this happened to me, I didn't have any NDAs. I had no non-competes. I just had a good heart and love and trust for people.
Yeah.
So, and so it completely blindsided me. But what it made me do is it made me buckle up, and it made me buckle up, and, things happen for a reason. I would much rather see someone crash out and find them what they think is a pot of gold right now before I get to where I'm going. And I look at that, as that in itself as a blessing, but you always have to have those boundaries. I think now the newest boundary I have is that I have a phenomenal executive assistant, where I'm rarely jumping in, and then when I'm jumping in, it's because I got to, and I think that has really, really saved me. And I think also too, it's gained a lot of respect from an email standpoint, right? I mean, when you're not even, and this is more like business related, like structure, like, I mean, when you aren't the person giving the message, but it's coming in behalf of you.
Yeah.
And then having to insert yourself after about 5 emails, the whole tone changed. I get a perfect example, man. I just left Canada last month, and man, we had a phenomenal time in Canada. We did some of the biggest television shows Canada has to offer. I'm talking Breakfast TV, CTV, E-Talk. This is equivalent of the Today Show, Good Morning America, and The View, and Entertainment Tonight. We did it with Matthew Knowles. And we caused so much commotion in Canada. You know, we're from the United States. I had every PR company you could think of calling me asking me how I pulled it off. Right. So at that point, though, right? At that point, didn't have to jump in until I had to jump in, and then everyone stopped talking.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, you have to have different, as you continue to rise in business, leadership, just have different things at different levels require different ways to reach you. And sometimes the ways to reach you might require a little separation. So none of this stuff that's happened to me and you happened to them.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, it's interesting too, because it's almost like we all have to have those learning lessons anyway.
Yeah.
Like I think I believe in the easiest way to explain it is I call it the power of contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't know how good something is until you know how bad something else is, or you can't know how bad something else is until you know how good something. You know, it's like it's like the yin and the yang. It's the power and the contrast. It's the flow and the structure. It's wrapped up all in that. You know, all in that. Well, I mean, we call it eternity. Honestly, it's how eternity works, right? We know God is awesome because we know evil sucks. You know,
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm just curious, how do you, and I know we're running out of time, but I'm curious, what are maybe the top 4 or 5 core values that you lead your organization with? Because I find that entrepreneurs a lot of times don't do a good job of creating the, what's the best way to explain it? The guardrails of their highway, right?
Man, I love that you're saying this. Keep going, because I'm looking up something.
I'm curious. You know, because I'm a big believer that if you don't define your core values and actually live by them, you can't train by them, right? You can't tell your team what you stand for, what you stand against. This is who we are. This is who we're not. And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs that want to be uber successful, maybe they've gotten to 6 figures, maybe they've gotten barely to 7 figures, but rarely do they get to 7, 8, 9, and 10 figures without being able to communicate their vision, their mission, and their core values and the things that they stand for and stand against. As someone as successful as you are and the organization is, I know for a fact that you have managed to communicate who you guys are and who you guys aren't. And I'm curious to know which standards you use.
Man, I love this conversation, man, because no one ever asked me those type of things. You know, obviously people will say all day long, oh, we got trust, we got responsibility, we got, you know, that's all fluff. You know, I think with us, when it comes to our core values and who we really work for, right? Who we really represent, who are we really talking to? And I want to pull it up just so I can strictly say, if you're listening to this right now and thinking, okay, who exactly is this for? Some people sell products, man, and you've probably seen this. They sell products to get the customer, but the customer ain't the customer that they should have made the purchase, right?
Right.
So for us, and when I think about this, right, when I think about our core values, it's an entrepreneur, it's a thought leader that is looking to rapidly increase like their visibility, to establish their authority, to connect with highly engaged industry-specific audiences through curated podcast appearances.
Yeah.
That's truly what it is, right? And then when we look at this and we think about, okay, how do you do that, right? This is how you look at leveraging these type of opportunities. And the core values of our actual company is being a company that has true, authentic, genuine relationships who put the client and the host first. Otherwise, it won't work. You know, one of the blessings we have when we talk about a podcast tour, we can take a talent and we know immediately the moment they sign up, after they take the intake form, who our strongest relationships are based off upon who their preferences are. You know, another one of our core values is that we can't guarantee everybody will like you. Can't guarantee that we're going to work really hard and land you on those 30 shows. That's what we can guarantee you in those aspects and in those categories and what we do and how we do what we do.
Dude, I love it, man. Dude, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, bro. Seriously, this has been awesome. You're welcome on the show anytime you want. It's funny. I say this all the time to the team or to the audience that entrepreneurs can look in the eyes of an individual and know whether or not they're an entrepreneur or not. They just know, because there's an intangible resilience that's needed. There's an intangible faith that's needed. There's an intangible strategic mind that's needed. Like, you need flow. You need to be able to have creativity and innovation and stuff like that. But you also need to have like the 5 steps ahead, the 6 steps ahead mentality from my perspective, right? And the conversations that I enjoy the most are service-minded, impact-driven entrepreneurs that not just bring meaning to the marketplace, but they also bring authenticity to the marketplace, because they are what they are. They live out who they say they are. So dude, I can't thank you enough, bro. Seriously.
Man, absolutely, man. Listen, I like this conversation, man. I like you, man. We should do a whole lot more together. I look forward to like just making our relationship a lot tighter, man. And the work you do, man. One thing that I enjoyed prior to even being on this interview is the preparation you've taken. I watched. I sent to my team. I copied the link of. I think you sent like this thing. You sent this thing about preparation and what to do prior
A
to
video,
getting
yeah.
video. Man, that
Yeah.
video's fire, man. I sent it
I
to my
stole it
team.
from Evan Carmichael. He gave me the advice.
Oh, I love Evan Carmichael. He was
Yeah,
on my he
he's
was
one of
on
my
my
best
podcast.
friends. Yeah, he's a good dude.
Oh, tell him I said what's up. I love that guy. He also was a huge motivator for me in my life in corporate. I watch his videos every single morning.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. But yes, the preparation you take into doing what you do allows for me to feel more confident to one show up for you,
Yeah.
two, to bring high caliber talent to you, and three, knowing that you're going to take really good care of them, man. And I really appreciate that. And it doesn't go understated. It doesn't go unthought of, man. And we're going to continue to send you our best of our best. And guys, if you're listening to this, you got a lot from this conversation. You got the how to apply yourself with podcasts, how to pitch yourself better, how to really understand what it takes to be a talent. You got to put in the work.
Yeah.
You can't just show up and expect for someone to give you a meal. You got to go to war with them.
Right.
You got to put on the jacket as well.
That's
and get
right.
on the field.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you, man, and I appreciate doing this.
Yeah, man, dude, I'm looking forward to doing some more stuff together. I want to learn more about what you do. I'm about to hit the road again myself, starting beginning of the year. I took a year off after the exit, to kind of like recalibrate and just work on content. We got a brand new community we're launching. We got a brand new whole entrepreneurial system to take, entrepreneurs from 6 to 8 figures. So we specialize in that because a lot of it comes down to people, process, and systems, honestly, more than anything else. And I'm looking to get my own stuff out there more this coming year. So I'm sure we're gonna do some more collaboration.
Absolutely, man. And guys, if you've been listening to this, I just want you to do, I tell people all the time, you just got to, I've been saying this since the day I cut a microphone on. You just got to dream it. You got to believe it, and you got to go out and you got to get it. And you're going to get there, and Steven, I got you, man. Let's do it.
Appreciate it. Dude, I love it, man. Shawn, and just so everybody knows, watching and listening, we're going to put all of Shawn's links in the show notes, all that good stuff. So we didn't get a chance to spout those off, but it's all right. We got you anyway. Make sure you check out Shawn and everything he's doing. Not just on Instagram and whatnot, but also if you are a thought leader and you are actively looking to get your message out there and you've got the goods, meaning you've done the work, you've done the work, then definitely reach out to Shawn and his team and see if they can't support you in this new endeavor. Shawn, thank you again, buddy. I can't wait to do this again, man.
Absolutely, man. Talk soon.
All right, take care.
I hope you liked that video. And if you did, make sure you check out this next video right here.
One of the kind of qualms about Gen Z, hiring Gen Z, whether it's true or not, one of the perceptions is a lack of grit. But if we look at someone's hardwiring and we have a role that's just a perfect fit, they're going to be fulfilled, they're going to be in their natural zone, then we have to do our job of empowering them.